Hi there, it's me, Reed.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and we're here today for a listening practice. If you're looking for a space in your day for an opportunity to listen for where God's at work in your life and what God might be saying to you through Psalms, you're in the right place.
That's right. We'll help you with that. You've
We'll
got
do it
what you need.
together.
Yeah.
Let's do it together. We are listening with Psalm 105 today, verses 16 to 36. So this is the center section of Psalm 105, which is a pretty long psalm.
Right.
That is concerned with retelling the story of what God has done in the lives of a particular people who thought of themselves as God's people, the people of Israel.
Right. Yeah.
Or the Hebrew people.
As recorded in the Bible.
As recorded in the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
So this is Psalm 105, verses 16 to 36 in the New Century Version.
Indeed.
And if you wish to, you could take some little notes for yourself. We're just listening as we read through this first time for a word or a phrase that stands out to us.
That's right. Why don't you read first?
I'll read first.
We'll listen.
God ordered a time of hunger in the land, and God destroyed all the food. And then God sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. And they put chains around Joseph's feet and an iron ring around Joseph's neck. And then the time Joseph had spoken of came, and the Lord's words proved that Joseph was right. The king of Egypt sent for Joseph and freed Joseph. The ruler of the people set Joseph free. Pharaoh made Joseph the master of Pharaoh's house. Joseph was put in charge of all of Pharaoh's riches. Joseph could order the princes as he wished. Joseph taught the older men to be wise. And then Joseph's father, Israel, also known as Jacob, came to Egypt. Jacob lived in Egypt. The Lord made God's people grow in number, and God made them stronger than their enemies. God caused the Egyptians to hate the people and to make plans against God's servants. Then God sent the servant Moses and Aaron, whom God had chosen, and they did many signs among the Egyptians and worked wonders in Egypt. And the Lord sent darkness and made the land dark, but the Egyptians turned against what God had said. So God changed their water into blood and made the fish die. And then their country was filled with frogs, even in the bedrooms of their rulers. The Lord spoke, and flies came, and gnats were everywhere in the country. And God made hail fall like rain and sent lightning through their land. God struck down their grapevines and fig trees and destroyed every tree in the country. God spoke, and grasshoppers came. The locusts were too many to count. They ate all the plants in the land and everything the earth produced. The Lord also killed all the firstborn sons in the land, the oldest son of each family. What do you notice?
I'm not totally certain. The Lord's words proved that Joseph was right. That stuck out to me. That Joseph was correct. I don't know. There's a long litany of, curses, I guess, against Egypt in there. And even Joseph, who's kind of cursed at the beginning, he's a slave. Somehow he's released from that slavery and put in charge of everything. I don't know. That stuck out to me. That's interesting, that part of the story.
So there's something about the experience that on the surface did not look comforting, comfortable, or easy.
Yeah, I guess it's like the Psalms in general. Often we read them and we go, whoa, it's so foreign to our understanding of life now and how we think of other people. We try to be egalitarian now. There's no us and them. You try to avoid that thinking and talk. But there is an us and them in this story.
In this story.
Very much so.
One of the things that I notice in this story, or in this psalm, it is this retelling of a story, is how the people did reinterpret their experiences. And they told it through the lens of, we're God's people. And even though there was a hard time for a time, there is this restoration. The Exodus is coming. That's the next part of this psalm. But in this middle part, where there is still, I mean, Joseph was sold as a slave, and the people experienced their own slavery. For me, there's that powerful piece in there that God sent someone ahead of them. So the Hebrew people are about to come into an experience of drought in the land where they are, but God has already wisely sent someone ahead. I'm also struck by how seemingly okay God is with being named as the one whose fault these things are. So drought is a thing that happens in nature. We go through these cycles up and down, right?
Where we live, it's common.
We live, drought happens very regularly. And right now we're in the midst of so many grasshoppers, right? Like that's just the part of the cycle in the years, but also the cycle in nature that's happening. And it seems like God is big enough to take responsibility for that. And if it hurts our feelings, that's okay, because God's also at work to prepare the next stages. So the cycles are going to come in nature, and God is big enough to be named as responsible for that, if that's how we need to name it, so that we can work through to the next stage.
We'll read through it again. I'll read it this time. But this time we're listening for an invitation of some kind, where God is calling or speaking to you, to us, about something we could do or become or go in a direction or something. It's an invite. So I'll read this again, and this time we're listening for an invitation. Psalm 105, 16 to 36 in the NCV. God ordered a time of hunger in the land, and God destroyed all the food. Then God sent a man ahead of them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They put chains around his feet and an iron ring around his neck. Then the time Joseph had spoken of came, and the Lord's words proved that Joseph was right. The king of Egypt sent for Joseph and freed Joseph. The ruler of the people set Joseph free. Pharaoh made him the master of Pharaoh's house. Joseph was in charge of his riches. Joseph could order the princes as he wished. Joseph taught the older men to be wise. Then his father Israel, also known as Jacob, came to Egypt. Jacob lived in Egypt. The Lord made God's people grow in number, and God made them stronger than their enemies. God caused the Egyptians to hate the people and to make plans against the servants. Then God sent the servant Moses and Aaron, whom God had chosen. They did many signs among the Egyptians and worked wonders in Egypt. The Lord sent darkness and made the land dark. But the Egyptians turned against what God said. So God changed their water into blood and made their fish die. Then their country was filled with frogs, even in the bedrooms of their rulers. The Lord spoke, and flies came, and gnats were everywhere in the country. God made hail fall like rain and sent lightning through their land. God struck down their grapevines and fig trees, and God destroyed every tree in the country. God spoke, and grasshoppers came. The locusts were too many to count. They ate all the plants in the land and everything the earth produced. The Lord also killed all the firstborn sons in the land, the oldest son of each family.
I like the way you read that and end it with a like, oh, there's more to come. Because this is just the center section of this psalm. The invitation that I hear comes from the awareness that Joseph had heard something from God about the way the future was going to be. And as he walked through his life, there were other things that happened that did not look like what that future that he felt he'd been promised. They didn't look like that at all. And yet he kept walking out his relationship with God. And so the invitation to me is to pay attention to those things that I feel like I have heard from God. And I've been in this kind of a listening practice using scripture and imaginative prayer for many years now. And there are some things that I feel like God has promised that are not present in our everyday experience. And I feel invited by Joseph's experience to just keep walking out the relationship, to keep trusting that God will keep working in my life. What do you hear? What do you notice as an invitation?
Well, I did notice the phrase, God sent the servant Moses and Aaron, whom God had also chosen. That, and when you read through it, though, Joseph at the beginning is chosen, but he comes as a slave. It's pretty terrible. The experience of the Israelites in this story is pretty terrible, and yet they're called the chosen people. And I am tempted, when my life isn't great, to think that God is against me. God's, holding back, that I'm not chosen. But just because my life isn't the way I want it to be doesn't mean God doesn't love me, or God isn't involved in my life. So God sent the servant Moses and Aaron, whom God had chosen. They're chosen. The people of Israel were chosen. Joseph was chosen. And those are it's difficult sometimes to be chosen. The invitation to me is to connect my experience to chosenness. Am I chosen? I don't know. Maybe I'm being presumptuous. Am I chosen? I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes have I been chosen by God? But I will accept that I am chosen. And the invitation is to remember that I'm chosen by God. God wants to be in a relationship with me, even in the midst of rough times. When my life isn't what I want it to be, it is tempting to say, oh, I wasn't chosen after all. Or, as in this story, the Israelites, as we read elsewhere in the Bible, that they cried out to God and saying, what's going on? Are we your chosen people? I don't know. It doesn't feel like it. And yet God sent, God sent Moses and Aaron to come. God chose them too. So we're all chosen, but sometimes it's hard to tell, or it's hard for us to really understand that sometimes in the midst of travail.
Sometimes the emotions don't match up with what the truth is. And we can acknowledge the feelings that are present right now while still connecting to the truth that we are loved by God and chosen, because each person is chosen. I wonder what you notice as you listen along with us, as we're in this process of listening together. What is the Spirit of God saying to you today? I hope that you will take a moment to make note of it for yourself and then let us know, because we'd love to hear. It would be so encouraging for us to hear from you what you're hearing from God today. Right. Thanks so much for being with us.
We'll see you again.
See you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.